Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Gargano. This is the podcast that surrounds everything youth sports. So I've covered pro and college sports, the highest level, and I have fallen in love with youth sports. I'm a big believer in sports for children. I just think it's such a great outlet and keeps them out of trouble, they learn so many great life lessons. So as we go forward with the podcast, we're going to be talking to a lot of different people in the world of youth sports. We'll talk to some professional athletes who have children of themselves. We'll talk about the journey of the athlete. We'll highlight some of the terrific youth sports athletes across the Delaware Valley and beyond. But really, we really wanted to try to give some advice to the parents. Listen, if you got a good story, good idea, please, like I said, hit me up and we'll get to Yo Kids Sports Podcast. I am so pleased right now to have with us two great baseball men, two men that really care about community. They care about the game. They care about the kids growing the game. And I admire what they do. David Amaro, the godfather of youth baseball. Ruben Amaro, of course, has done everything. Player, GM, coach. He's done it all across Major League Baseball. Two brothers, sons of the great Ruben Amaro Sr. Joined the program. First of all, guys, I applaud you and all the works that you've done just, for the game itself. David, I'll start with you. Your passion toward growing the sport and youth baseball, your resume speaks for itself.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having us.
Let's start, though, David. What about the youth game really kind of drew you to it? It's funny because the two paths that you and Ruben take are different.
Well, baseball has obviously been in our blood, as Dad was an 11-year big leaguer, and we grew up, and he was a baseball player, coach, scout, Latin American coordinator, and we loved the game, and we just loved the camaraderie, the team element, but yet you had an individual point in time during a game where you had to deliver yourself, and we just fell in love with it, both Ruben and I, and it afforded us a lot of opportunities. So that's really what we loved about the game, and really we just knew that's what our dad did. So we happened to embrace it. So that was enjoyable.
Rube, what was that like? Just growing up the son of a player. It's funny. I often think you see the successes of sons of big leaguers. Ken Griffey Jr. and the whole thing about the game itself, and I guess it's just being, allowed to be a part of it at such a young age and fostering the love that you have for it.
Yeah, Anthony, thanks for having us. As my brother said, he's a little bit older than I am, so I sort of idolized both my dad and my brother, and I sort of wanted to follow in their path. My brother's a couple of years, 2.5 or so years older than I am, and we just love sports in general. I think as a young athlete, loved playing everything. And my brother's first love and only love was baseball. He was baseball centric, man. And I actually enjoyed and started playing soccer as a young kid. That was like my first organized sport. And then I sort of morphed into, as I got an opportunity to be, part of the group that did the bat boying with the Phillies and just being around it a little bit more, I started to love the game more and more and more, and sort of wanted to emulate my brother. Now, my brother was like a big first baseman, third baseman, pitcher who had a lot of power. I was a little dude who was a middle infielder, ended up sort of going the route of my dad as an infielder, and then later on played the outfield. But we were totally different types of players. But it really, just being around the game of baseball and being able to be around the people that, all of us, you grew up with, the Mike Schmidts and the Larry Boas and that 1980 World Series team and even in the 70s leading up to that team, I just fell in love with the sport, and we've obviously taken different paths. My brother and I. He ended up playing professionally briefly with the Cubs, and I ended up, playing. Um, but it was really just about being exposed to it, and we didn't really know anything else other than how cool it was to be around a major league clubhouse.
That's beautiful. So, what I love your mission because, you know, the game has changed from a youth standpoint so dramatically, right? So, I have an 11U player, and so I'm living it, right? Doing the Ripken thing and traveling all over, and the whole thing. Our workouts. I just got our schedule for our workouts in January. And the one thing that's so different now is, and this is going to lead into your mission, which is everything's travel ball. It's, the youth game has changed so drastically, right? Like where Little League and Legion Ball are now going by the wayside.
That really is unfortunate. I mean, we grew up in an era where American Legion ball was great, Little League ball, and they had the Devlin League in our area. You had leagues, and everything was competitive, and nobody had to go travel to compete. And there was a lot more kids also playing. There was a lot less sports out there too. So I remember back in the day, my father saying, and again, he's playing or coaching at that time, so he wasn't able to make a lot of my games. He was able to a little bit later when Ruben was playing, but my dad's mission always was, you have to play the game the right way, respect the game, and that's what we learned growing up. Wear the uniform properly, get to the field prepared, run 100% all the time, don't jog on and off the field, don't step on the white lines, all the different things that old school, baseball players would preach, about how to go about things. Don't ever be disrespectful to an umpire. Call the umpires Mister. Don't call them Blue. I mean, little things like that. I remember my dad always telling us about, and that kind of carried over into our playing days. But the world has changed. You have to compete and play on these travel programs, and we have one certainly that we've been running for 26 or so years, but that's a whole other story. But the point is, we're trying to figure out a way. I think we may have to offset finances for people that aren't able to do it, because everybody should have an opportunity to play baseball, and it should not be based on the economics.
And that's the thing that stands out is league fees and the travel fees. And I mean, geez, everything from the price of the bats. I mean, Rube, these kids are swinging $350 bats. It's incredible when you think about it. When, growing up, how about it? Like we all grabbed a bat from the community bag. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up playing in an era, as David said, where everybody used the same bat. I mean, 1 through 9, you're using the same Easton bat. Things have obviously changed in a lot of ways for the better as far as the equipment and that stuff is concerned. But the commitment that's needed, both financially and time wise, it's changed pretty dramatically. We always believed, and we continue to believe, that it's really important for a player or an athlete to be really well rounded. They should be playing a variety of different sports. We played, basketball. We played soccer. My brother played soccer and football. Then we played baseball. So, you kind of had that natural break. And, I guess in my day, I really feel like the athletes were a lot more well rounded because they had the ability to, one, take a break, and then two, play another sport where your muscles and your things and your the actions that you and the things that you did were so important that you utilized in other sports. I mean, I even swam one winter for my school. So there were so many different things that now it's so specialized. It's changed so dramatically. My brother's being kind of humble. He's had the Philly Bandits. It's an organization that has really sort of pumped out a ton of guys, and really his mission, and he can talk about it, but his mission was really to give kids an opportunity to be seen by college coaches, and just to give them a chance to get educated, because that's what was important for our family. the whole education piece of this. I mean, that's what it all gets down to. Very, very few people get a chance, as you know, Anthony, to play at an elite level of sports. The percentages are tiny, and but yet there are a much better percentage of chance for athletes to have the opportunity to get a scholarship or get educated or whatever, go to a good college, and be able to mitigate some of the cost of that if you are good enough to play in that program, whether it's D1, D2, D3, whatever the case may be. And really, been the mission of the Philly Bandits and the mission of our family, and it's something we're trying to carry over in my dad's name.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, Ruben, you went to Stanford. David, you went to Duke. And, education meant a lot to your family. And you could see by what you guys are doing and giving back. And David, this is why you started this foundation, right? You guys started this foundation and you really want to help. So let's dive into it. The Ruben Amaro Senior Foundation. Tell us about it. Tell us how we can get involved. Tell us what you guys, the mission is.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we are excited. I mean, this foundation is honoring the legacy of our father, who, as we've been discussing, he said, look, education is going to help you throughout your life, right? And so we want to give back and help more kids get an opportunity. Our mission's simple. We want to help young student athletes go to college, get an opportunity to go to college. And if you're utilizing baseball as one of the extracurriculars to help them do that and save their parents a couple dollars, that's wonderful. What we found in helping many players get scholarships and play baseball in college and some professionally, what we found is there's a lot of money on the academic side. And I don't mean straight A students, because everybody can't be a straight A student. But those that do as well as they can academically often have an ability to get a lot of money off on student athlete at college at the Division 1, 2, and 3 level. So we're finding there's no full scholarship. This is not football, and it's certainly not basketball. So the full scholarships don't exist in this world. So they're all partial scholarships, and we know that rising costs of education. So we started this foundation in Dad's name to really level the playing field and help generate money through our nonprofit. This is a nonprofit, 501, C3 that disseminates money to kids that can't do it, and also helps them in college. If there's a shortfall in college, we help and educate. We help by sending them money so that they can, go through their college education, get their degree. So it's growing, and what we realize, this isn't all about one organization. We have several organizations, and we have several more that have called us to say, hey, look, how can we be a partner in your foundation? Because then it gives them an ability to raise money. So if a dollar comes in and it's not designated to a particular team, then we will disseminate that to all of the teams within the partnership, and it allows them to raise tax deductible money and help out young players that otherwise couldn't afford to do these things. And what I mean by doing
Anthony,
these things is traveling all over the place to get visibility by college coaches.
Anthony, you know that just having a youngster yourself, what the
Right.
costs are as far as travel baseball, it's no longer, you sign up for a team, you pay $50, and your family carries you for the summer. There's all types of expenses, and it's gotten to the point where we're starting to weed out some great athletes who should have a chance to play
Yes.
at a higher level and to be seen. And so whether it's an inner city kid or it's a kid in the suburbs, it doesn't really matter. What we want to try to do is give everybody an opportunity to play on one of these, these club type of teams, and to be able to supplement their ability to do that with the funds that are coming in, and that's really it in a nutshell. And if we can do that, and we can do that for more players, it'll grow the game. I think that'll it'll also maybe push some players that would be athletes in another sport, maybe giving them an opportunity to be baseball players. And I think that's a really important part of what this is about.
It is. I applaud. Listen, I firsthand, you said it, man. Like, it's expensive, And a lot of kids just can't afford it. And David, do me a favor. If you could log back in because we lost your camera, and I want to make sure everybody sees your handsome face. But Ruben, you're spot on about this. Like, it's a lot of kids are going to go, you know what? Forget about it. Forget about baseball. I'll just play basketball because all I need is a ball, and I'll just go to the playground. And the game misses out on all these great players, and the game misses out on, just the excitement and fans. And you know how it is, Ruben. Like, when we foster fans of the game, you got to play it, man. Part of the being a kid is, playing it, and you're loving this, watching it. You're imagining yourself playing for the Phillies. I mean, that's all part of the whole thing.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, it's there are so many opportunities and so many different sports and so many different things that the athletes can do in this day and age. If we can facilitate the ability for that player, that athlete, female or male, whether it's a softball player or a baseball player, it doesn't matter. If we can facilitate their ability to be able to play on some of these club teams that basically are fairly expensive to play for, then that's what this is all about. We want to give everybody, make it level the playing field so that those athletes can do what they need to do.
I love it. I love it. David, you talked about, like, and I got a buddy of mine who has had to go. Now, he can afford it, but he's got a kid, good ball player. He's been in these showcase games. I mean, he was back and forth to Georgia 4 different times this summer playing in showcase tournaments. Like, how many families can afford to go back and forth to Georgia to show their kids, so these kids can play and, get exposure to college scouts?
You're exactly right. It is, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to mitigate the expense there. But what we have found, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Look, we have situations where we have families that are playing, and the young man is playing in our organization. And when we started to grow and have more and more players, the burden became higher. All of a sudden, somebody loses a job or something happens, and Ruben and I are fine. To the extent we can cover it out of our pocket, it became too big, and that's where this foundation came in. But what's happening? The good news is southeastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey is becoming a hotbed of talent. There's so many talented players in our area within a couple hours of just the Philadelphia area that know how to play baseball, that are good players and can play in cold weather. What I mean by that is college baseball starts in March. So if you're not in Florida, Texas, or California, it's cold and it's snowing, and our kids can handle that, where some of the kids from those other areas can't. So we become, when I say we, our kids become more desirable because they can handle the cold. You can look at some of those really expensive bats that you just talked about, and it says you can't use them under 55 degrees. We play under 55 degrees half the time, So anyway, the point is, it is expensive, and the reason it is because the tournament costs are very expensive, uniform costs, equipment costs, and all these organizations try to help out, and they're trying to cover uniform costs, cover different costs. But now we may have a vehicle where, look, I understand that cancer research and juvenile diabetes and those kind of causes are really significant, and they're so very important. But if somebody can donate some money, and they also can donate to help young men and young women get an opportunity to play college sports, I think that's also a very, very good avenue to donate money.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not mutually exclusive. I mean, let's face it, we know what sport means to our society and what it does to help kids. They don't need to go play for the Phillies, right? Like, all they need to do is, even the kids that just play through high school, it just helps them being a part of a team. It helps them stay out of trouble. I mean, I want my kids to play sports all year round because I know it occupies them. It's healthy for them physically. It's healthy for their brains, their development. So that to me is a worthwhile charity. When we talk about, what sport means to development of our next generation.
You make a great point, Anthony, because for me, and I live in the sort of the fantasy world of being involved in baseball, and I'm not necessarily in the real world where my brother is. He's in marketing and sales and that sort of thing. But the reality of it is this: when you play sports at a high level, you become especially if you get to play sports and have that on your resume from college, that is huge. And I know, and my brother can speak to this more, but we've talked about this at length privately, that when you're hiring kids, you want young people who have played sports, who have competed, who have been part of a team building together to have success. And I think there's a whole lot of like this, different tangential things that can happen when you give a young player or a young athlete an opportunity to go play at a high level, because it's not necessarily about what they're going to do as an athlete. It's about what they're going to be as a person. And that's what we're all about, is giving them an opportunity to have a chance to be successful in life.
Amen. Amen, brother. Hey, David, how do people get a hold of you? Like, if you're out there and you're watching this, and maybe you're part of a youth organization anywhere across the Delaware Valley, what's the proper steps? What's the protocol if you're involved in a baseball or softball organization to then kind of reach out to you and take us through the steps of how they would go down?
Really easy. So the website is simple. It's Ruben Senior, RUBENSR.org. So it's, just the way it is, RubenSenior.org. Or you could email me at damaro@comcast.net if that's easier. But I think the website is really self-explanatory and really helpful. But I wanted to add one last thing that Ruben said, and I can't emphasize it enough. In this world where us as parents, my sons are older now, but us as parents, we always want to help. What I love about baseball and softball is our athletes learn how to fail and how to be resilient and how to come back and do things again and try harder. In that world, I think it's just they teaches wonderful lessons to the boys and the girls. And what ends up happening is they tend to have, when they move to the next step of their lives, whatever that may be, they're able to handle things a lot better because they know what's the next thing, what happens after you fail. This baseball's so crazy. I mean, you fail 7 out of 10 and you're an all-star. Can you believe that would not fly in any one of our daily jobs, to fail that much? But that's why I think baseball is a great tool. But I'd also emphasize that the players need to play multiple sports. To Ruben's earlier point, don't be locked into. We want athletes to play the game. Play football, baseball, basketball, soccer, tennis. Play everything you possibly can until they tell you can't. Because inevitably, we see the guys that are multi-sport athletes tend to get hurt less because they're utilizing all kinds of muscles in their body and they're on the field more. And I didn't do any statistical analysis there, but I see that with our guys that are playing multiple sports as opposed to the ones that are just playing one sport all year round. So just something I got
it. I'm so glad you guys brought this up because I want to delve into it. And again, this whole podcast is advice for parents and youth athletes. And keeping up with your fellow young baseball players is an issue, right? So let's talk about other sports. So I want to use my kid as an example. So he's playing basketball. He played football. He played fall ball and he played football. He plays basketball. And now come January, we start our winter workouts, right? Because, March will be around here and then they'll start playing games. So my question is, what's necessary in your guys' eyes and what's not? So he did fall ball. And again, come January, he'll start up workouts and they're 3 days a week.
Let me just talk from my perspective as far as baseball is concerned. You see so many young players now, just as far as physically, so many young players who are getting injured earlier and earlier because they're playing baseball and throwing the baseball like 9 or 10 or 12 months out of the year, which is to me a lot for a young player because it puts a lot of stress on your arm. And that is just not a natural thing to do. The act of throwing a baseball is just not a natural thing to do. And so I think the exposure, especially for young athletes, anywhere from, 8 to 12, I think it's important for them to like get the natural break and time for their bodies to recuperate so that they're, now as they get older, I understand there's a world of the specialization now with the athletes that they feel like, well, they'll be behind if they don't play fall ball and summer ball and spring ball, and I just think that there is something that my dad has always told me, and it will never go away in my mind. And I believe this as a professional on the baseball side, as a GM, as an assistant GM, whatever the case may be, as a scout. If your son or your daughter is good enough, they will be found. They will be found. And so there is this, obsession with, having to go to all these showcases and what have you. If the athlete is good enough, the athlete will be found and that athlete will get an opportunity. That doesn't mean that you don't work at it, but the reality of it is you don't have to overexpose yourself. And my brother can talk more about this because he's dealing with youth athletes much more than I am. But I just, at the end of the day, if your son or daughter is a good enough athlete to play at the D3 or D1 or D2 or even professional level, they will be found. They're not going to be lost through the cracks.
And Anthony,
Will they be
you
developed
said,
though? That's the question, right? Like, will they be developed from a baseball standpoint if they don't play fall ball or they're limited workouts? I guess that's, as a father, that's all of our greatest conundrums, right?
let me
That's a great
great
It's a
question.
great question. It's great. Yeah,
One
go
thing
ahead, Dave.
so we have a lot of players that play football and soccer in the fall. If I could abolish fall baseball, I would. Okay. Why? Because they need down. I want the kids to play soccer and football. Lacrosse, they can't play. Lacrosse is the same time, right? There are sports that conflict, right? So people get frustrated with baseball and then they go play lacrosse because they're the same season. But I've told guys, look, coach, I'm going to play football, but then I'm going to come to. No, you're on the team. You're on the team. You are going to go play and enjoy football and be safe. Go. Soccer, whatever the sport is in the fall, okay? Because here's the other thing that happens. Everybody's so hung up on showcases. Showcases don't get somebody an opportunity, don't give somebody an opportunity. Kids are not ready to go, and then all of a sudden they go to a showcase in December and they're throwing as hard as they can and they get hurt because they're not ready to do, they're not developed
Right.
yet. They're not ready. So I am so against all those individual showcases that people spend so much money on for their sons and daughters. Because if you can't stand out because you're not the fastest, you're not the biggest, you're not the quickest, you're not nobody's getting any scholarship because their exit velocity is phenomenal. If it was, mine's 120 right now. Okay, I'd be playing at my old age. So the bottom line is exit velocity means zero. It's good hard contact consistently and blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? All that stuff. So the showcase world to me is not a good one, and that's not where you should put your money. Focus on, to your point, development, but you don't. But be athletes and play multiple sports. And at some point, you may really excel in one, and hopefully it's baseball. And then you can focus on it, but not when you're 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. You don't know. Just go out and play everything you possibly can because ultimately, physically, it's going to help you. And then we don't have to get into rehab stuff and all those other things that so many kids are involved with now from the different strains and stresses and breaks and God forbid Tommy John. So
Right.
anyway, we want athletes to be out there playing and learning how to compete playing as a team, camaraderie. That's big. Because if you want to play college sports, second question I get from a college coach if they're looking at one of our players, Dave, is a kid a team guy or is he a showcase guy? They want to know that the kid wants to win,
Definitely.
and it's not his individual, stats that are most important to him.
It's almost like the AAUization of baseball, which is showcase, right? The AAU basketball thing, which kind of creates a lot of selfishness on the floor, and it's kind of filtered into baseball in that kind of way.
Yeah, and I would just say you asked a great question, Anthony, about development. There are some great organizations that are committed to developing players. There are some organizations that are committed to sending them and making money, and then factoring. It's like a factory. You're just flipping guys out there, and one of the things that my brother can actually do is let you know, because he knows every single youth baseball program in this entire area. So one of the things, if you happen to want to email him and ask him, hey, where's the best place for this guy to play? Where can he learn how to play baseball? I know that the Philly Bandits, our mission is to teach people how to play baseball the right way. So his organization is going to do that. But he also knows that there's other organizations that do a good job, and maybe other organizations that don't do as good a job. But if you need advice, if you need some information about that, certainly David can help
I love
with that as well.
I absolutely love that. David, what is your feeling on pitching coaches, infield coaches? At what age do you think kids should start to really, work and then work with individual coaches in the game?
My belief there is not until they're on the big field. Okay, when they're playing on the smaller field. So once they're on the big field, 13 plus years.
That's 90 feet. That's 90 feet.
90
60 feet 6
when
inches.
They're playing on the big field, a 90-foot field, 60-foot 6 inches, all that good stuff. Once they're on that field, then having some personal instruction is always helpful. But I'll tell you where I've seen kids get themselves in trouble with their high school coaches, where they say, I heard this before, and I'm like, ooh, I said, be careful, guys. They'll say to their high school coach, and the key is when you're playing on the high school team, you need to get on the field. You need to be liked. You need the coach to know that you're a team guy, right? You can't say, hey, coach, you know what, I'm not going to throw today because I have my private pitching guy that I go to on Wednesdays. Guys are saying that, and then they're not endearing themselves to the coaches. And guess what happens? They sit on the bench. So I advise all our guys, do not talk. Whatever your high school coach says, you do. Some are practicing all year round. Some are doing. You have to follow the rules of the particular program so that you get on the field. Not getting on the field doesn't help anybody. But I think it's fine. I think it's good. There's really good pitching guys out there. There's guys that are very good hitting guys. The one thing that my dad was very specific about, he did not like the underhand. This is in baseball only. The underhand flipping to players at all. He used to come around and say, "What are you doing with these guys? Don't." It was a coach threw a bunch of pitches. Now they're flipping and all that. They're never going to see a ball from that angle. Sit on a bucket and throw darts if you're tired, so that you're always throwing the proper way, so the kids are seeing them. But so many
Anthony, I actually banned underhand toss in our organization in Philadelphia for a couple of years in our development program. Yeah, we banned it. Just because, again, you don't when you're throwing the ball from under. I mean, you very rarely. How many Dan Quisenberries and Ken Colbys are there out there? Very few. So you want to, when you're tracking the baseball, you want to track it from top down.
Yeah, that makes. What's funny? Makes such perfect sense that you never, and 90% of these organizations, all the coaches will do it. I'm thinking to myself, I'm guilty of it. And you're right.
There's nothing wrong with front flip. I mean, I did it. Everybody did but I would prefer to have guys front flip from sit on a bucket and throw from up top. Boom.
Yeah.
Same sort of theory. Or someone's going to have to deliver the ball from a higher level, because you very, very rarely see the ball working up underneath.
That's
Pretty
so
simple.
great. That's so great. Hey, what would you guys, advice for, for when it comes to parents that are a little leery? So like you have the little league thing and the rec ball, and I've never seen a bigger disparity between the rec ball, because the travel kids come aboard and it's, especially during the real little ones, when you get to like 8, 9, 10, 11, that age group, the disparity is so great that it chases away a lot of kids, because, sometimes they shouldn't even be on the same field because they can get hurt.
Yeah, that's a really tough one, and we've had that situation. And I'll never forget when I was coaching. I did something interesting. When my kids were really younger, I actually had them play for another organization because I wanted to see what was going on out there. I didn't want it to be Daddy Dave ball all the time.
Yeah.
And one of my sons, who's still in baseball, it's pretty funny. I couldn't even coach him. He would throw his glove at me when he was a little guy. And now now he's in baseball. Okay, and because he was a character, right? So I never coached him. But what I see is, you have to be really careful with the amount. You don't want to play too much. If the parents are making the kid go play or go work out, you can turn people off, right? And you don't really want to do that. So you have to make it fun, and you have to be really cautious, because to that one point you said, a mom was yelling at me, "Why is my son not playing first base? Why is he not playing first base?" And I said, "Ma'am, honestly, you can't defend it. I'm worried because some of the kids throw so hard." Sure enough, I got so aggravated with her yelling at me that I made the move, and I don't do this anymore. I don't listen anymore. I do what's the right thing. I put the kid at first base. Kid catches the ball, throws, bang, hit the kid, hurt, the whole thing. I turned around and I said, "That's your fault."
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is, you got to be careful in baseball. You start mixing the kids that are more advanced, and the kids that are more advanced at 10, 11, 12, a lot of times they may have matured and they may not grow any further and may not get better, so you have to kind of separate them and be careful with, if there's travel guys and, the in-house guys, just let them play. It doesn't matter what level, just as long as somebody's not overwhelming the other team, because then there's no benefit to that, so you
Yeah,
just have to.
I will say this. I mean, baseball is a very unique game, and the development of the game and the ability to develop, sometimes it can happen really fast, but most of the time it takes some time for guys to get there. It's a
Yeah.
different type of sport. And there's so much negativity. We've talked about this a little bit. It's a negative sport. Like, you fail a lot in baseball, and the last thing you want to do for a young player and a young athlete is to put them in a position where they're feeling overwhelmed, because they'll turn you off, and that'll be the end. And it will be a shame if the person actually has some ability, some natural ability, to have that person be turned off, whatever sport it may be.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that they're developing at their own level and not putting them in. Now, some people can play up. Some people can can excel, but I think it's really important. That's one of the toughest things to do is to understand the steps it takes for some athletes. Some guys get it faster, some guys get it slower, but you just have to have a level of patience. And, you have to have people who know what they're doing as far as instruction is concerned to help kind of nurture them along.
I want you guys to talk directly to the parents for a second, because you are two accomplished men, and for every parent, because David, you mentioned that woman, and I see it, with and you see it all the time, and Ruben saw it from a different perspective when it comes to fans. Everybody thinks their kid should play shortstop, right, bat third, and is going to be the next Trout, right, and people need to understand A, being realistic with their own child, and B, allowing coaches to be able to coach, right? Like, without the parents sometimes are completely overbearing. And I think it's good for them to hear from accomplished men like yourselves to kind of heed some real advice. So, I mean, David, let's start with you. Like, what would you say directly to the parents?
First thing is, and this is something that I'll never forget, we were 10, 11 years old. Do not ever carry your son or daughter's equipment. Never, ever, ever, ever carry their equipment bag. Every one of you dads and moms do it. And the kids are 10, 11, 12. It just happened the other day with our 14-year-old group. I said, I had all the kids, and I'm not coaching the team, but I'm running the organization. I had all the kids go work out inside with the coaches, and I went and I talked to the parents. I said, 4 of you carried your kids' equipment in. 14 years old, right? I said, stop. Okay, this is you can't do that. I want you parents, you can talk to me about anything, but let the kids learn to communicate for themselves and let them be responsible for their own equipment. They have to bring their glove, and if they forget something, that's on them, or they'll never learn. We have to stop trying to help do everything for our kids, or they're not going to be self-sufficient. So that was something I
gotta tell you, it's great advice, and I'm guilty, man. Like I remember driving home like 40 minutes because he forgot his cleats, right? Like, and I get back, the kid, he wound up hitting a triple in his Jordans. So I'm like, look at this little punk, right? Like,
it happens. It's unbelievable.
I carry the bag. That's such great. That's awesome advice. You're right. We have a tendency to be the lawnmower or the helicopter or whatever parent it is. Sometimes, we need to back off. That's just awesome.
One other piece of advice, and this happens all the time. Mom and dad, please, if your son is pitching or your daughter is pitching, don't stand directly behind so they see you. They see your face. So every pitch, this happens all of a sudden, the kid throws a pitch and it's borderline. Umpire calls it a ball. Parent is behind and their face is going. They're aggravated. They're yelling at the umpire.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they're right behind. So that every pitch that the kid throws, and I saw it more on the softball field. It was unbelievable. Dad yelling at girls throwing a great game, balls off a little bit, and she sees her dad's aggravation every single pitch.
Yeah.
Please get out of their eye shot, move away, let them have fun. They're not going to want to do it if they keep thinking they have to appease you. Last thing, us as parents, and this is real, are going to believe that our sons or daughters are about 25 to 30% better than they actually are. Okay?
Yes.
At least.
Yes.
At least, because it's really hard to play shortstop in college. Very few of the guys in this area end up going and playing, but everybody's a shortstop and a pitcher, and all that for all the right-handers. And I get that. Just the key is to play and let your kid play multiple positions, because if he plays on the high school team, they may have a senior at shortstop. He may have to play left field. So let's be well-rounded and get on the field, and then everything will work itself out.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so true, man. You're spot on. Rube, what would you say to the directly to the parents whom you probably heard from as fans?
I think more than anything else, it's about just let your kids play. I know everybody wants. I'm a parent. I wanted my kids. They were both soccer players. I was on the sidelines trying to cheer them on, trying to beat the hovercraft dad. All I can tell you is this: is that if your kid just knows you're in the ballpark or in the stadium or wherever in the playground, that's all that matters. They know that you're going to be they know that you're going to be supporting them. My dad used to come to games and he would be like down the left field line or the right field line. He would never want to interject. I mean, there are some things that I'm sure he'd watch the coaches and he watched them, watch the game, and he would probably think to himself, well, That's probably not the right way to go about it. But he always told us the same thing: respect your coaches, respect what they say, do what they say, heed their heed their word, and as you continue to develop, as you get older and older, the instruction level will get better, and that's what's going to happen. It's a natural order of progression. So to me, it's about just let your kids play, and be as supportive as possible. I think when parents get too involved and they start to push and push, I think it puts the kids in a tough position because they may not be all that interested in being a baseball player. Maybe they want to go, do something else. Maybe they want. I mean, it's great to expose them to those things, but it's also sometimes, as Charlie Manuel used to say, less is more. Less can be more, and I think that's an important element of it. Be supportive, be there for them, but don't necessarily run the show, because at some point they're going to make a choice, and it's going to have to be whether they love the game and love the sport or not. And that's the bottom line. It's really about their lives, not yours.
That's beautiful.
And Anthony,
You
if I
guys,
could say one last thing about parents. The one thing that you do need to get involved with is the amount of balls that your pitchers throw. And this is not, girls can pitch a lot more than the guys can, but if they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you have to be really careful with how many pitches they throw. Because what you're forgetting about is when they're in the field, they're throwing equally, they're throwing twice as much as you think they're throwing.
yeah,
And they're developing, and their growth plates aren't ready yet, and their ligament. Be very careful. They're all throw too much, so you got to be really careful with that. They shouldn't throw more than 65
And
seconds.
I gotta say this, even at the collegiate level, we all know who Aaron Nola is. Correct? Anybody in this area knows who he is. You know that Aaron Nola did not pitch for his summer team ever, leading up until college. And there's a reason why he's one of the most durable players in the game, and why he's not, knock wood, why he's not had any major injuries, because he took care of his arm as a young player, and his parents made a great decision to preserve that. And I will say this: the action of throwing. And I studied kinesiology and sports medicine in school. I was good at. If I didn't play baseball, I was going to try to get into that area of the game. I can tell you unequivocally that throwing a baseball is the most unnatural thing to do. It is physically the most difficult thing to do on your body and your joints and all parts. That's why you see so many ligament problems, so many stressors on your arm, so many different things, because it's a very unnatural thing to do. Now, softball players, they're working underneath the axis. It's different.
right.
The mechanics of it are totally different. And so you really have to be careful to preserve that youngster, to make sure that they're not putting more unnatural stress on top of unnatural stress as youngsters.
That's great advice, and that's such a great nugget with Aaron Nola too, because you see kids all the time, man. I mean, you can't be throwing spring and then your summer team, and then if you're playing fall ball, it's just too much, and you forget about all the pitches. We used to focus. You remember, this was Ben McDonald, and back in the day about pitch counts, but like we forget that when they're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, all through high school, how much they're throwing at that level. So that's just wonderful advice. Real quick, I just want to thank you guys. I love what you guys are doing. I love your mission. Once again, the Ruben Amaro Senior Foundation. We're looking for donors, right? So if you donate, it's because it's a charity, it's a tax write-off. We're looking for youth organizations to get involved. So anybody in the area with youth baseball or softball to contact you guys, and it's a great mission, I think.
Thank you.
Anthony, thanks so much for allowing us to be with you.
Yeah, and I need you again at some point. You guys are too good, and the advice is too strong. So a lot of parents need that. So boys, thank you, and listen, have a Merry Christmas. God bless your families.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thanks so
having us.
much, Anthony, and thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Here at Yo Kid Sports, for Brendan Petrilli and myself, Anthony Gargano, I just want to thank you for hanging on our channel. We love it. All right. We love doing this content. Just do us a solid and hit the subscribe button, because the more people that we can reach, that we can amplify this thing, the better guests, the more content that we can produce. So do us a solid, hit the subscribe, tell your friends, your families, your coaches, get everybody subscribed, because chances are here at Yo Kid Sports, we're going to be talking about your kid or your coach. It's a lot of fun. Hang with us.